please help me welcome Janelle Monáe to the stage. So here I am, sitting with Janelle Monáe.
Hi, everybody. How are you guys feeling? Is everyone feeling amazing as I'm feeling? I'm so happy to be sitting here speaking with you.
Likewise. I wanted to get started talking about the tour that you've just come off. Because I remember reading a few months ago while you were doing the press cycle for Dirty Computer, that you had some feelings of nervousness about how this project was going to be received by the greater public and by your fans. And now that you're at the other end of this press cycle and of this extensive tour, how are you feeling about it now?
Well, I just wrapped up the European first leg of the Dirty Computer experience. And we did the first U.S. leg as well, right before we had come on this side of the pond. And it's just been incredible. It has been, I mean, it's so hard for me to articulate the emotions that I get looking at all the Dirty Computers from the U.S. to Paris to London to Amsterdam to, you know, just all over. And there's like just this connection that if I were to put every audience together, that they would be the same tribe. They don't even know it. It's just like when I go city to city, it's so beautiful and so special, and the energy is all connected, and we're connected as a community. So it's been incredible. But to answer the first part of your question, I was extremely nervous with this project and putting it out and, like, you know, going back on the road and trying to put together a full production of Dirty Computer, because we released the emotion picture with the project, and it's such a visual experience, and the concept is strong, and we wanted to figure out, well, how do we articulate sonically what people are hearing to the stage? How do we articulate what people have seen from the emotion picture? How do we bring these ideas to the stage? And, you know, one of the things that we wanted to make sure of is that we were really just connecting with the, I like to call them fandroids, not just fans. Yes.
I think there's a few of them here tonight.
On a basic level, you know, there needs to be that connection, and making sure that they come, they want to hear the songs, and how can we build something special around that, and just build something that hopefully when they leave the experience, that they feel better about life, about themselves, more hopeful, feel celebrated, seen, loved, heard, and all those things. And to question that early on. And also I wanted to do, you know, something more as a performer. I challenged myself to play guitar. I challenged myself to, like, do a full-on 24-count dance break in the middle of the show, and just so many other things that I did not do, that I had not stretched my muscles, or I hadn't exercised my muscle in the area. And so I was nervous. I didn't know what was in my mind and in my heart, how all that was going to play out. But it's safe to say that I think we've put together something special and something that I'm proud of, and I'm extremely thankful for all of your support.
Wonderful. So with something like Dirty Computer, the pure scale of it, as you mentioned, the visual part, the music part, where does it start? Because I know that Dirty Computer as a concept actually predates Metropolis, but how...
ArchAndroid.
Okay, a D-tape.
That's okay.
Predates Archangel. But where did you start with the conceiving of this project? Was it the concept? Was it the music? Was it the visuals?
Sure. Well, I think that it had to do with my need of wanting to build community for marginalized groups that I fell into. Regardless of who I am, you know, as an artist today, and I've been given lots of, and I've worked hard for lots of opportunities to come my way. But you know, when I strip off my makeup and my clothes, and you know, Janelle Monáe, I'm still a young African American queer woman born to working class parents, you know, in the States, and I identify with many of those groups, and I've identified growing up my whole life. And so it was just really important for me to create an experience, a community, to where the people that I love and care about that are in those marginalized groups felt like they didn't have to change who they were to be accepted in society. We accept you at the Church of Dirty Computer, you know? You can continue to embrace those things about you that people deem as bugs and viruses and that they need to be fixed. It's about, you know, cracking our own code and redesigning our DNA or loving our DNA just as it is, and feeling like, you know, things will work out in our favor because we have each other. We're here for each other. And so it started with community first, and then I just built everything around that.
I mean, it seems like community is something that is super important to you, especially in your creative process, because I know that you created the Wondaland Art Society really early on in your career, and from what I understand, it's like a communal space where people can come and jam and hang out and have lunch together and all that kind of thing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how this particular community started for you.
Well, Wondaland is a quite magical, mystical space. At many different times, it morphs depending on the type of artists that come through. We have visual artists, we have artists, musicians, screenwriters. I mean, just artists who want to redefine the blueprint, you know, and come together and build together. And we all have our individual like superpowers, and when we come together, it can create something that's really, really special. And it happened, it started in a little tiny city in Atlanta, Georgia, in the South. And I think the historically black colleges, Morehouse College, Clark Atlanta University, Spelman, Morris Brown, really brought us together, because these were like all young black women and men who were just looking to just redefine the future of black entrepreneurship. A lot of people started businesses in Atlanta, and so I wanted to become an independent recording artist. I started selling my CDs out of my, what kind of car? Oh, I had a Mitsubishi Galant. My green Mitsubishi Galant, and I was selling my CDs out of my trunk. I was living in a boarding house with 6 other girls, pushing my CDs. I worked at Office Depot. I was selling ink, computer printers. I mean, you name it. I was working, but I knew that ultimately I just had a different way of wanting to take my career, and I needed to have community, though. People who understood what it meant to just package your own CDs and like build something from the ground up. So Wondaland started as a seed, and we've been watering it ever since.
I personally have never been to Atlanta, but I feel like I hear about it and I see about it.
You gotta come.
I'd love to.
Why you ain't come? You know you need to be in Atlanta.
All right, let's sort it out afterwards. I'll come back with you. Okay. But I love the idea that I have in my mind anyway of this really vibrant, thriving brown town, as they call it, where the African American community is really prevalent. What is it like walking around Atlanta? What do you see? What do you feel?
Well, I mean, it is the home of Outkast. It's the home of LaFace Records. You know, you have the Ushers and the TLCs and the Tony Braxtons who came out of there. Goody Mob, hip hop. You know, has always the Atlanta hip hop scene has always birthed some real superstars. And those artists, the cool thing about Atlanta is while artists are, you know, ascending and rising, they're taking their hand and they're pulling up other artists. And so in the way that the Dungeon Family, Outkast, all of them came together, Big Boy from Outkast, and even Andre, like, were mentorships to Wondaland, or mentors to Wondaland. So that's really the great thing. It's not like everyone's on an island. We're collaborating together. Even if you go down there today, at Wondaland, you know, we have artists like Saint Beauty and Roman John Arthur and Jadena and Deep Cotton. You know, they're collaborating with each other. We put out projects and everybody's recording projects in different rooms, and we can go in and be inspired by what that artist is doing. So that's the beautiful thing, is when you walk around Atlanta, you never know. People do multiple things too. Like, you could be waitressing at a nightclub and hop on a stage and have like thousands of fans who know your songs, and maybe you have never left Atlanta. You know, that was my life for a minute. So yeah, everybody there the food is amazing. It's a lot of salt on it. You gotta be careful. It's the South, but the food is amazing. The music is amazing. And what I love most about it, though, is everybody's really trying to like uplift each other, and they understand the importance of collaboration and how, you know, if one of us wins, we all win.
Yeah. I wanted to, applaud if you like. I wanted to ask you as well about the HBCUs that you mentioned before, the historically black colleges and universities. And I'm sure for a lot of people in Europe, perhaps like Beyonce's Coachella performance was a really kind of illustrative moment to kind of convey how important it is, like culturally and musically. Did you attend one of those universities when you were in Atlanta?
No.
Oh.
Too expensive for me at the time. I studied at the American Musical and Dramatics Academy in New York. I studied acting and music and musical theater. When I left school there, I moved to Atlanta, and I actually lived on the campus of the historically black colleges. So I got like all the partying. I got to party with everybody, but I didn't have to pay that tuition. I went to a community college. Because I was like, I just left expensive ass New York. I was just like, I'm not doing this. But I was absolutely involved in the communities there. I would perform at all the dorm lounges, like literally go into the dorm lounge areas and have a guitar and just be performing. And how I would find out if my music was any good is I would measure it by, okay, are they stopping? And most people didn't stop. I had about 3 people who would really, really be like, when are you coming to the dorm lounge again? Or when are you going to be on the library steps? I did a lot of performances on the library steps. That was my life. Yeah, that was my life there. And I just thought it was a great way to find out, like, to test your market. I felt like that. These are the types of people that I want to make music for. What do they think? And also, they didn't know me. You know, so it was just like I didn't have to deal with like going back home to Kansas City after school, because my mom and my family, they were not disappointed. They just were confused because I'd always spoken about New York, New York, New York, and for me to leave because I felt like I had a very particular way of writing, storytelling that I wanted to make happen, but being a part of that musical theater community was limiting in ways. As helpful as it was, I felt like it limited me exploring my own ideas and what I wanted to say in my own voice, not being able to hear my own voice. So Atlanta University Center was my home, but I didn't have to spend all the money to live there.
Sounds like a very smart university hack there.
Yeah, I love it. And I met pretty much all the people that I collaborate with who's a part of Wondaland. Nate, Rocket Wonder, went to Morehouse. Mikhail Moore, who's there, went to Morehouse. Chuck Lightning. I mean, I met some really amazing. Kelly Andrews went to Clark Atlanta University. Some really incredible people who are, you know, right now working with me to this day with Wondaland and with my career.
Yeah, it is really interesting to kind of look through the liner notes of the music that you've produced and seeing the names of your collaborators repeating over and over again. How do you all communicate within your kind of like little ecosystem in Wondaland? Like, do you need to be explicit with each other? Can you pick up each other's cues? Do you fall out with each other? Like, how does this dynamic develop, especially over such a long...
All the above. Yeah, I think like any community and any, you know, it is a business as well. You have highs, you have lows, you have tough conversations that you have to have, but the great thing about Wondaland is everybody is a protector of love and a protector of making sure that love is at the center of what it is that we do. You know, it's like if it's constructive criticism, you know it's coming from a loving place. You know that it's coming from a place of just wanting to see our community grow, making sure that it works for all of us and not just some of us. But there's a lot of laughter, a lot of, you know, a lot of debates around what songs should be on albums and what singles should be released first. Like we have this place where we call it the giving room. Some people may call it a living room, but it's a giving room where you give all your thoughts and your comments around, you know, the art that's going to go out, and you step in the middle of this grass area and you stand there and then you say like, hey, I think that this song should not go on the album because, or I think that this song should go on the album. You know, we have those friendly debates. None of us take it too seriously, and we don't want to take the fun out of it. You know, it's important for us to be having fun in the process because our time is limited here. Why spend it or waste it not having memorable experiences that we can all look back on and be proud of and feel like we really did fucking live our lives on earth. Like that's what it's about, and it's about doing it with the people you love, and I'm happy to be doing that.
Well, it certainly sounds like you found your home in Atlanta. But I would love to ask you a little bit about your birth home, which is Kansas City. I mean, we can talk a little bit more about your upbringing, but I'm curious, what did Kansas give to you musically or culturally that you're still carrying with you, if anything?
Oh my gosh. So I feel so blessed to have grown up in Kansas. Kansas has shaped me immensely. I mean, I am from a majority Republican place, and I live in the Native Americans were there, like they were everywhere in the United States of America before a lot of people got there. But I am from a county called Wyandotte County, and it's predominantly African American, Hispanic, and it's actually the poorest county in Kansas City, Kansas. And growing up to my working class parents, my mom was a janitor, my dad, biological father was a trash man, and my stepdad, who's just like my dad, worked at the post office. So I grew up watching them work their asses off, wearing uniforms every day. I still wear my black and white to pay respect to them. My grandmother was a sharecropper in Aberdeen, Mississippi. She picked cotton. She had 14 brothers and sisters. They shared one pair of shoes. And she ended up working her way to Kansas City. That's how my family got there. And she, you know, served food in the county jail for 25 years. She ended up having 12 kids. My mother was the youngest. And she owned 4 homes. And she was the best grandmother that anybody could have asked for. I strive to be like she is. She is somebody that, just at her core, I wish I can be more like. She is a very service-oriented person, a giving person, and a forgiving person. So growing up, understanding what it meant to work with the folks who were cleaning up the community and making nothing out of something has given me perspective. You know, when I walk in a venue that I've sold out, if it's 8,000 seats, I'm speaking to every janitor. I'm speaking to every person, you know, who comes into my hotel room, or I walk past them. I try my best to make eye contact and let them know that I see you, I'm not above you, and what I'm doing, wearing my uniform and doing what it is that I'm doing, is to pay homage to you, because my parents are me, so we are all connected. So I try to just live life understanding that you can't get too high, you can't get too low, tip on the tightrope, stay balanced. You know, you can be a sandwich away from being poor. And what would you do then?
I think that mention of you and your uniform, as you call it, your black and white aesthetic, I'd love to dig into that a little bit. But first of all, I wanted to ask, in relation to Dirty Computer, I did notice, because it is like so visually gorgeous and vivid, and I noticed that in a couple of particular videos, I believe it was for Screw and Django Jane, that you're wearing quite bold colours, which seems to be a pretty significant move for your aesthetic. Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think that with this project, it was important for me to embrace all of me. You know, I told myself that this time around, I wanted to explore publicly all the many sides of me. Some people, you know, privately get these sides of Janelle Monáe, and I thought it was just important. And it was more so, it's kind of selfish in a sense. It was freeing for me to tap into the dimensions that I have, that we have as women, as human beings. And I think that I'm evolving. I think that it's important that I don't become a slave to my own interpretations of who I am or what the public thinks about me. It's important to not pigeonhole myself, to not get comfortable, you know, to rest in my laurels, but to make sure that I'm constantly creating art and I'm experimenting, and I'm unafraid to make, you know, art that folks may not understand at that time. You know, it's important as an artist that you're stretching those muscles, and some of my favorite artists have always, you know, moved to their soul clock, moved when they felt the need to move, talked about certain things when they felt the need to talk about them. So that was important this time around. In terms of clothing, all of that was just me saying, hey, this is where I am at the time. This is important that you understand that I'm not a monolith. I have depth. I have, just like all of us, like we have so many different sides of us. And it was fun. It's important to continue to have fun in that process too.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to kind of go back to the original Janelle Monáe or Cindy Mayweather aesthetic with the tuxedo suit. But before we go back in time, I want to ask specifically about the pants in Pynk. Yeah. Can we talk about them?
The infamous pink pants. Well, they are locked away in a safe.
Okay. They didn't go on tour with you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were on tour with me. But they're not right now. They're very protected.
Okay. Precious pink
two
hands.
very strong women.
Okay.
Guard them nightly. Yeah, it's real.
The pink, I'm just going to say it, the pink pussy pants. Where did this idea originate from? Because from what I understand, you released the videos for Django Jane,
And Make Me Feel.
Make Me Feel first, and then the video for Pynk kind of like hit the internet.
Yeah.
What was the kind of process of conceiving this aesthetic?
Well, when we were putting together like visuals for each song, we wanted to make sure that, one, the story was cohesive. You know, it takes place in this place called the House of the New Dawn, where they're abducting dirty computers and they're cleansing them. They're stripping away their identity and making them torches, who then would serve as personal nurses for the new dirty computers who are going to be getting their identity stripped away. And so you go into the mind of Jane 57821, played by me, and you go into my memories as they're deleting my memories. And each visual, each video is a memory or a dream. Oh. Yes.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yes. And you can see Jane 57821 fighting, you know, Django Jane, like that is her. That is a very clear dream that she has as they're trying to strip her identity away. She's fighting back during that moment. Not a lot of people know that, so I just gave you
exclusive
some tea. But Pynk specifically is a celebration. It comes during the celebration part of the album. The album is broken up into 3 parts. The first few songs represent the... I'm sorry, I'm on a different time zone right now.
You just got off a plane. It's totally understandable.
Yes, they represent the... Help me out right now.
Reckoning?
The Reckoning. Yes, sorry. Okay, I have another art. So the first 4 songs represent the reckoning. Imagine being called a bitch for the first time by a man as a woman. Imagine being called a nigga or nigger for the first time as a black person in America. Imagine just someone using language to degrade you. Well, that's what a dirty computer means in this society. And so you spend those first 4 songs saying, reckoning with the fact that in this society, you are less than. You are not, you're not enough. And you need to be cleansed and reprogrammed into what our society thinks that you would be most beneficial as to us. So then you go through the middle part of the album, which is the celebration of what it means to be a dirty computer. And you have songs like Pynk, and you have songs like Make Me Feel, you know, you have songs like Django Jane, you have those songs that are you know, really, really meant to empower dirty computers, women, it's meant to be very much so just very much so sexually making sure that you understand that I'm a liberated woman during that section, and it's just being very unapologetic. And so then the last few songs represent the reclamation and reclaiming what it means to be American, because this is a very American album as much as it's global, and I think there's this interconnectedness that we all have. I could only write this project from my truth and my perspective, and the things that I've been able to see over these, the things that I've been able to see and experience. And so it's saying that I am a dirty computer and I too am American. And although this system is not working in my favor, it will be my country one day. And that's pretty much the kind of thesis for Dirty Computer, those three stages: the reckoning, the celebration, and the reclamation. And Pynk comes through the celebration of women. And I know you call them pussy pants. Some people call them...
Sorry for being so crude.
No, see, right there. Pussy, like, come on. But people call them labia pants. People call them flowers. You know, and I just, you know, want to be clear too that one of the things that's important is that people know that I don't believe that women who, you know, may not have vaginas, I don't believe that they should not be considered women. We're like, you don't have to have a vagina to be a woman. And so that's why we had the girls. There were some women in there who did not have the pants on. Yeah, because we wanted to make sure that that it was being as inclusive as possible while coming from a very personal place for me. So yeah.
I think that's a very important message. Let's talk a little bit more about Americans, which is the track that closes the album. I find it fascinating, but I also feel like it feeds into a tradition of artists like David Bowie or Bruce Springsteen making songs that on the surface are really up-tempo and sound inspiring, and people can misinterpret them as being very kind of like jingoistic or nationalistic, but if you look at the lyrics, it's quite scathing, and I think that your track, Americans, fits into that narrative. Were you kind of aware of, I guess, the history of other artists doing things like that, or even, you know, Childish Gambino, This Is America, which is, on the one hand, like a get-down dance floor jam, but if you kind of read into the visuals, it's something a little bit different. Like, how does that resonate with you?
Well, I mean, when I wrote Americans, I wrote that song in like 2 to 3 days. I had a first draft of it, and it was going to be called Southern Man, actually. And it was coming from like the perspective of what it meant to be like this white male in the South, and him saying, "This is my America," and, you know, these are the things, don't try to take my country. And it was meant to come from that perspective. And then I started coming, I said, no, I feel like there are a lot more people who have something to say. And I started to get these visions of other Americans, and like it started to, you know, go from the perspective of the black woman and the perspective of, you know, the middle-aged white woman, and then this white man, and it kept going. And then what I came to, what I settled on was something that highlighted different characteristics about Americans. And it showed that we were all fighting for our voices to be heard. And it's like, depending on where you are in the song, you get a different perspective, right? But then it's important, it can also be, it can also be looked at as the dirty computers or the marginalized saying like, hey, this is my America too, because you have the preacher, he's not a pastor anymore, but his name slips my mind right now. Sean McMillan is his name. Hi, Sean McMillan. I want to give you a shout out. He really helped inspire the lyrics in the song, because he was saying that, you know, until poor whites can get an opportunity at getting more jobs, and until black folks don't have to come home from a police stop and get shot in the head, until same gender-loving people can be who they are and love who they are, until you know, our Latina and Latino brothers and sisters don't have to run from walls. This is not my America, but it will be my America before it's all over. And so that is really at the core what my song Americans represents. It's not a you know, it's not saying I live in America, we're so perfect. It's actually highlighting the disappointing things, the hateful things that the abusers of power are doing to our communities. And it's saying that we, as all these different voices, have to remember that we have to coexist, we have to figure out how we're gonna get along, and we better fucking figure it out fast. You know, because we have another generation of people being ushered in, and we have to create a much more inclusive space, and we don't have to, but it would be great for us to figure out not to let our egos get in the way of their better future.
So was the political turmoil that the US has been gripped by in the last couple of years, like, to what extent did that feed into your decision to kind of expose more parts of yourself, parts of Janelle Monáe, the person, as opposed to these characters that you had been embodying for so many years? Is that kind of like a direct link to make?
Say the first part one more time.
The kind of atmosphere of politics in the US.
Oh, okay.
Like how much did that
influence?
Yeah, did that feed into your decision to release Dirty Computer now?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you guys watch the news. You know, are probably up to speed on what's going on. And I just want to say right now, I don't support the current president or that establishment. I want that to be very clear. If it wasn't clear enough, I don't consider myself a politician. You know, I'm thankful to be an artist who can, you know, use music as a way to unite people. I feel like that's my job, is to unite and do that through music. And, you know, there are all sorts of people who come to the shows, and we may not all have the same political beliefs. Some people probably voted him in, you know, but they're there. We get the opportunity to share something very special, and I get the opportunity to speak on behalf of Dirty Computers, on behalf of marginalized communities, and hopefully through the songs and through love and through all that, maybe, you know, that can change somebody's mind about who I am and, you know, where I come from and the people that I'm trying to help fight for. Hopefully that can happen, right? So for me, it wasn't really about, you know, trying to continue to be divisive and point fingers. Obviously, I'm voting. I'm exercising my rights. I'm trying to, you know, vote smart. But it's not about jumping on a hate train for the current president. It's about how can I celebrate those who really need it most. I had to ask myself, who was I okay with pissing off? Who did I really give a fuck about supporting, you know, what it is that we were trying to do? And how could I ask those people to lean in that do have the power to help the folks that I want to celebrate and love, who do come from a more privileged background? How can I do that? How can I be a uniter? And so that's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on bridging gaps and making sure that I'm celebrating those who need it most and keeping my focus there. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about having to figure out who you're going to piss off or who you're going to be okay with pissing off. But I would also imagine that this process of letting people in or letting people see more of you must also at the same time be liberating somehow. Yeah?
Yeah, it can be liberating, or it can also be it can be, yeah, I mean, it's cool. I mean, I've never been that type of person where I feel pressure to have to answer anything that I don't want to answer or talk about anything that I don't want to talk about. Yeah. Just like, you know, any free-ass motherfucker out here.
I was watching an interview where you used that same phrase to apply to yourself, and also to apply to the person that you considered to be your mentor, the sadly missed and sadly lost Prince. I'm sorry, I know this is a bit of a downer, but it would be really wonderful to hear you talk a little bit about his impact on you musically, because I know that he didn't contribute to this album, but his spirit or his essence kind of comes through in various songs. So it'd be great to hear about how you process that loss, I suppose, through your music, or where you think his influence still lies in your music.
Sure. I must start off by just saying it is difficult for me to articulate, you know, how much he means to me and what he means to Wondaland. And I must say that without Prince, without Paisley Park, I don't think Wondaland, I don't think we would even know how far we could push art and what we could do with music and with ideas. You know, he was thinking outside the box for a very, very long time, and he was executing at an extremely high level. And it's difficult, you know, to even model your career after Prince. He is a genius, you know, in so many ways. On the business side of things, he's a guitar slayer. I mean, producing and writing and just, you know, he's a world that continued to morph and go into different worlds right before our eyes. So it was great to have that as inspiration, but I think it was greater to have him as a mentor and to be able to have a conversation like this, you know, often with him, and for him to pop up at our shows, you know, secretly, and ride around the venue and like, you know, have after parties and like lock us in the house for 7 hours and just play music. Like if I'm here, he'd be where this speaker is, you know, playing Purple Rain with the band. And I mean, so many amazing memories. The one thing that sticks out is that Prince was a giver. He was a giver of his time to new and upcoming artists. When I first came out, you know, he was like, hey, I'm here for you, whatever you need in your career. I think you're thinking in the right way. I'll always let you know if you need, you know, I'm always here if you need to talk. I'm always here for Wondaland. I'm at you guys' service. And that's what I feel most inspired by, is that he didn't allow his mystery to get in the way of his mentorship.
Are you a mentor to anybody?
I am.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can be better. You know, my time, I'm here. You know, I'm doing a lot of different things outwardly, but I have folks in my family and younger cousins that I try to be mentors for, and in different ways. You know, like if they're trying to launch their business or their careers, I've helped in many ways. And I think the most important thing is just people just want time, your time. And so I'm trying to do better about that. And I do have, you know, some beautiful artists by the name of Saint Beauty. They're part of Wondaland Arts Collective, and they are, you know, incredible writers and performers, and they're playing instruments, and you know, I just feel like those are my babies. Like I love them so much, and so I've been really trying to help them. They went on tour with me this last Dirty Computer leg in the U.S. and yeah, I hope that I can be a better mentor, though. I can do better in that area.
I'm sure you're a great mentor.
My niece loves me, so that's all that matters. I can do no wrong in her eyes.
Well, look, perhaps we can talk a little bit about some of the collaborators that you've worked with. We've mentioned Prince. The list of artists that you worked with on Dirty Computer is pretty fascinating. Brian Wilson, yes. Tell us all about that.
Brian Wilson, give it up. Beach Boys. Yeah, I mean, like so many people, I'm a huge Beach Boys, Brian Wilson fan. And when I was writing Dirty Computer with Nate Rocket Wonder, when we were singing the vocals, we kept hearing in my room in our head, and I kept hearing his tone, and I just reached out. I had someone from my team reach out to his manager, and we got an email back saying, we reached out and I wrote this nice note, and I was like, hey, I would be, honored if you would be a part of the project. And he wrote back and he was like, yeah, send me a tape in the mail. It was so funny. It's like, a tape? Okay. I don't know where I'm gonna find a tape, but he really did want a tape. His manager was like, yeah, we need to figure this out. So we had to figure it out. And he listened to the song, and he cut his vocals. He was the first feature on Dirty Computer. He was very fast. It was incredible.
And did you always know that was going to be opening the album, that was going to be?
Mm-hmm, I did.
Okay.
At first we were like, oh, it should open with Americans, like do something upbeat. But I was like, no, you got to bring people into the mind of what it means to be a dirty computer. This is introspective. This is you're walking into the psyche of me, and it just felt like it was a great entry point. Yeah.
And one of the other collaborations was on the track Screwed, which I mentioned before. And I want to ask you a little bit about one of the lyrics, which I think is really interesting. But on that track, it featured Zoe Kravitz. Yes. So are you do you go way back? Have you known each other for a while? How did
I was just with Zoe last night. We were in London, and we share the same birthday. So we have a connection.
When is your birthday?
December 1st.
What star sign are you?
It depends on the day.
Oh, okay. Moon's constantly moving, that
constantly.
Kind of thing.
But yeah, Zoe, it just felt right. She and I, we performed at this festival called Afropunk Fest. I don't know if you guys heard of that, in Brooklyn. And I was one of the first artists to perform at the festival when it was. It was probably like 200 and just 300 people. Now it's like tens of thousands of folks coming out. And I was performing on a little stage, and I obviously knew about Zoe from her parents, and she has famous, incredibly gifted parents. But I found out she was in a band called Elevator Fight, and they were also performing at Afropunk. And so I went to go watch their show, and I was like, this girl is crazy. And then I was like, oh, and then I found out we had the same birthday, and I was like, oh, makes sense. I'm like that sometimes. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. We have the same birthday. That's why you like that water. I like that water too. Sometimes I can be like that. But we've just had a connection since then, and we've kept in contact, and we emailed each other, and we said, we have to do something together. The first person who has the idea should email and reach out to that person. And I had the idea first, and it was Screwed. And I wanted to create something that was up-tempo, upbeat, that was highlighting, what we were experiencing, what we were feeling, like while we're trying to, be young, wild, and free, and have sex, and have parties, and, do all these things. You just feel like there's a world going on around you that is just full of, like, any day you just feel like there could be a war. What tweet is going to be sent out that could start like a nuclear bomb? going over in the States. Like, these are things that are
real.
options, you know? And you don't want to think like that, but it just talks about, like, while we're celebrating, having parties, you know, there's a world where there are families being broken apart. There's a world where all that is, and it's encouraging at the same time to say, you know what, you don't want to do gun reform, fuck it, we'll put water in your fucking guns. That's what we'll do. We'll just take all your machine guns, we'll crush them, and we'll make them water guns, and we'll give them out as gifts for Christmas.
And you will like them
everywhere. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of it's a slap in the face and a kick in the balls to the status quo.
There's a spoken word section in Screwed, and the line is, I believe, if my memory serves, everything is just sex, except sex, which is power.
It's just sex. Now ask yourself who's screwing you. I thought you were going to ask me about, you fuck the world up now, we'll fuck it all back down. Because I have a funny story about that.
Please, proceed.
So I went on tour in like, it was probably around the ArchAndroid era. No, because we couldn't afford a tour bus. So it wasn't there. It was whenever I could afford, we could finally had a budget to get a tour bus because we were riding around in a church van. Prior to that, a white church van. And we all shared, it was just one bus. So the band, crew, everybody, we're all on one bus. And I said, I walked on my bus. If you know me, like, I can't record in a studio with like food everywhere or like cords out. Like, everything has to be neat and clean and smelling good, especially my room as well. Although some would be like, you're very messy. But whenever I'm writing, I need to be in a clear room, a clean room. And whenever I go to sleep, I need the room to be clean. And so we were on the bus, and the band was there, and I walked on, and we had just done a show. And I was ready to like celebrate, and I looked around, and there was like pizza boxes and socks and drawers all on the floor. And I was like, I was like, whoever fucked this bus up, y'all better fuck it back down. And I don't even know where that came from. Like, it's like, you know what it means, but you're like, what made you think of that? And it was just a reflex. And it ended up in the song. And it was like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you fucked the world up now, we'll fuck it all back down.
What was the response, though, when you said that? Did they snap into action, or did they laugh?
They laughed at me.
Okay.
And then they went into action. Yeah, they went into action. They laughed, but they went into action. And it just stuck around. I had the line for about 7 years. Yeah, the line for 7 years. And I was like, this is what it means. And then it also is just a conversation. There's a conversation to be had about how women of color in particular are always out on the front lines. How we were, you know, when you think about certain wars, when you think about the first, when you think about the war between the South and the North, and when we were going, you know, fighting to end slavery, when you think about all those things, you know, it was black folks and it was women also on the front lines. We were the first people out there. And I think that continues to happen. You continue to see us, despite how the world can treat us and how they've treated us historically, we continue to help clean up a lot of shit. And when you look at, you know, people marching out in the streets, which that was a huge inspiration for me. I created a song. We made an anthem called Hell You Talking About. And I know you said you're going to ask me about that. Yeah. But when you look at all the pictures online and when you look at the faces who are out there, you know, there are a lot of black women who are out there marching and hand in hand. And they're, you know, not just black women. If you look at the Women's March that was started right after the election. I don't know, did you guys see that?
Yeah. It's incredible. News.
So Screwed was really inspired by those faces. Yeah, those people saying, you know, we know that we didn't screw it up, but we feel like it's our responsibility to fix it.
We'll screw it down.
Yeah, we'll screw it down.
Did you perform at the Women's March?
I spoke.
You spoke?
Yeah, I did perform. Yes, I performed. Yeah. Let me tell you about that. The Women's March, they didn't know that many people were going to show up. I didn't know. I didn't have a speech prepared. They were just like, I had just done Hidden Figures, and I was on promo tour, and they had asked me to come and say some words. They were like, yeah, we're doing, you know, just, a little, you know, a march, and we just want you to come on stage and say a few words. And I was like, sure. And when I get there, I was like, oh, my Lord. There were like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people there. And you couldn't even really see the stage because there was such a sea of people. Like, if you're looking at the stage, it was just like a tiny stage. They were right about that. But it was like 1 million people watching it. And I was scared. I was freaking out. Angela Davis was walking backstage. You had the mothers of a lot of the young black kids who have been killed because of the abuse of power in the police department. And, you know, there were activists there were actresses, there were musicians. It was just a lot. And I was really nervous. And, you know, I just went up there and I just spoke from the heart. I just tapped in. I think I was on Hidden Figures promo. Hidden Figures was set in the 1960s. So a lot of the things that I had been watching to get into my character, it was really crazy that a lot of those things felt like they were still happening today. And it was just in my heart. I just had like that just fighting spirit, you know, with me from coming off doing the movie, and then you know, a few days after the election, after we got that news. So, yeah, I did that. I think you can see it online. If you don't know what we're talking about, you can go online and watch it.
I definitely want to ask you about your film roles in two extraordinary films, Hidden Figures and Moonlight. We'll come back to that. But you mentioned the track, which I can't justify saying it in my accent, like what you talking about?
Hell you talking about.
The hell you talking about.
Yep.
There we go. It doesn't work in my accent.
I love your accent. It's cute. Oh. Where are you from again?
Australia.
You're from Australia?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Australia Day. You go to Australia Day? Australia Day?
No, that's a pretty controversial topic.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Invasion Day is what we like to call it.
Okay, all right.
We can talk about that backstage.
Okay, backstage.
But you released this track, Hell You Talking About. It's the last time.
I love it.
And it was a really incredible... No, it's dead. I killed it. It was really incredible, like... The first time I watched it, I kind of had to pause it part of the way through because it's super emotional. Just a very raw video, very basic kind of drum beat. And several of your artists, your Wondaland artists, are literally just calling out the names of people who have died at the hands of either police violence or racial violence in general. In the United States. What was, I mean, obviously we can all understand the motivation behind, but what was the story behind putting together this song and releasing this as a pretty clear statement?
Well, I mean, regardless of if we're artists, if we're, you know, working in this business, we're human beings first. And as a human, you know, just thinking about somebody's life being taken because of the color of their skin or because they had on a hoodie. Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland being taken to jail because she, you know, didn't speak the way an officer wanted her to speak. Rakia Boyd. I mean, we can go on and on. You know, there are so many names that we called out, but it was us giving a release to so many people, including ourselves. Like, we needed to say that personally. We just felt like, how can we contribute? And we knew that they were doing a lot. People were doing a lot of marches. There were people who were really out on the front lines. And I was not out there as much as some of the families and friends of these people were. And we just thought, you know, this song is a vessel. This is a tool for you. Use it, you know, say your loved one's name. This is how I want to contribute. When you want to give up, when you get tired, you know, put this on, take it with you, speak it, and let it be therapy. And let's honor them. Let's never forget them.
And I found it pretty interesting while I was scrolling through YouTube after I'd watched that video to see that David Byrne of Talking Heads fame, and also a very well-established and well-respected solo artist, has taken to incorporating this song into his performances. Were you aware of that? Like, how did that all come about?
Yes, he reached out to me. First of all, I love David Byrne. He's a big musical hero to me, and an incredible person and human being. You know, for him to reach out to me and tell me, hey, I'm really moved by, you know, hell you talking about, and I, as a white male, I want to honor these young black, brown women and men who were murdered because of the abuse of power in the police force and around. I want to honor them. I want to be an ally to you guys. For him to say that and write me and saying, I'm going to shout you out and let people know, like, you know, you guys, you know, started this, I just thought it was just so, it was such a godlike thing to do, you know, for him, somebody of his caliber, to reach out to me and ask for that type of permission, and to continue to own it, and to continue to be an ally to those families and those friends, and to let people know that he sees us. I think that we need more of that, you know. I think that's right now, that's where that's the space that I'm in. It's like, how can we be allies to each other? How can more privileged folks protect those who don't have the access, or who don't have the second chances that you may get? How can you protect those? How can cisgendered folks protect those in the LGBTQIA community? How can I, as, you know, a black woman, help protect my Latina sisters? You know what I'm saying? How can we really become allies to each other? And I think what David Byrne is doing through music is a great example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's wind back a little bit to Hidden Figures, because I find it fascinating that you were appearing in this film at the same time that the Women's March was happening, and also in the wake of the election of Donald Trump to his presidency. How did this project find you, Hidden Figures?
I like that you say that. It did find me. It really did. We found each other. I got sent the script through my agency, and I've been sent, you know, a few scripts that I was like, okay, this could be cool, and I could do this. And I just done Moonlight. Moonlight was my first film, so I did Moonlight, and I was approached for Hidden Figures to read Hidden Figures. And while I was reading it, I didn't know if it was, you know, I didn't know that it wasn't. I thought it was a fictitious story because I had never heard of these women. I'd never heard of, you know, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, the women who were responsible for doing the calculations, the human computers, that's what they were called, who did the calculations for the astronauts to go into space. Because how could that not be taught in our classes? How could I just not know? I'm a young black woman. Like, how didn't I know about these extraordinarily gifted black women who were geniuses at NASA, working at NASA during the segregation era? And once I found out it was a true story, I just said, I have to honor them. I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that their stories did not get erased any more than what I felt they had already been erased, you know, from me. And yeah, it was just an incredible project to be a part of. And I have some sisters in Taraji and Octavia. Yeah.
What does film acting give you that your music projects don't?
That's a great question. Well, the difference between releasing an album and doing a film is that when you are doing a film, you are doing what's best for that character. You know, you're a part of an ensemble. Yeah, everything you do is to support that story, that character. When you put out an album, it's you. Everything you say, every guitar riff, every lyric, every piece of the album artwork, it's all under your name. If you say something, it's she said that, you know, not the film or somebody in the film said it. It's like it's under you, and these are your thoughts. People assume that this is your story. This is more autobiographical in a sense, and so I feel more pressure to do music than I do acting, because with music, you know, it's coming from you, and the world is going to say these are your ideas. And I'm very close. I write, you know, and I collaborate as well. But it's always this feeling of like, oh, I'm going to be judged. Mm-hmm. Like I'm in a vulnerable state right now, or I'm in a very fragile state right now, and I have to go out and promote this. And I might be judged by, you know, the types of things I want to talk about now. You know, will people continue to support me now that I'm in this new phase? You know, it can be, if you're not ready when it's time to release the album, if you haven't like said like, hey, this is where I am, you got to really have a talk with yourself before you release a project, because you will get, it'll seem more personal when critics, you know, make comments, or when supporters or fans, it all just feels like this is a look, or this is commentary about me as a person. So in a sense, but it's also exciting. You know, it's very exciting to be able to go out and do something bold, and you know, to say, yeah, I said it, I'm here. Let's do this. We're doing this. You know, this is where I am, and I want to contribute. And I come with me, if you will. So all of it it's about balance. It's like, you know, never get too high off the praises that people give you, and never get too low off the criticism. Just stay very balanced.
I guess let's talk about Moonlight, which is, if anybody hasn't seen it, just do it. It's really, really extraordinary. And your performance is also really extraordinary because it's very raw. It's very visceral. Like it's you can feel the heat from Florida. You can see the weariness in these people's faces.
And it was very hot.
Yeah.
How many of you guys have been to Florida? Oh, okay. You been to Miami? Okay, all right.
And I guess it's easy now at this point to draw kind of links between the Janelle Monáe that we know now, post Dirty Computer, and the struggles of the young protagonist in Moonlight, Chiron, who is grappling with his sexual identity. What was it that brought you into the film? Was it the story? Was it the people connected to it? Tell us about it.
It was all of that. It was, you know, seeing Chiron. There's so many Chirons in my community. You know, when I looked at him and when I read the screenplay, he jumped out as a little cousin to me, as somebody that I knew. And Teresa, I played, she was like a surrogate mom to him. His mother was on drugs, and she just wasn't there to be in his life like he needed her. And so my husband in the movie, played by the great Mahershala Ali, yes, shout out. He and I, we took him in, and as he's trying to figure out his sexual identity, we're there with him. And he asks us, you know, what is a faggot? Because he had been called that. He's been teased, and he's going through all these things. And one of the things that I wanted to do was just to be a great listener. It taught me that it's just most important to just listen. Sometimes we can talk to just hear ourselves, or we're talking just because we want to pacify somebody or we want to make them feel good. We're like, well, let's just jump in, you know, or it can be a nervous tick. But the thing that Chiron needs, and what I wanted to make sure that when people were watching it, that they could, you know, watch and like apply to the conversation that they may be having with someone young who is trying to understand their sexual identity. The thing that I wanted people to take away was that sometimes all it takes is for us to just listen, not judge, not try to push anybody any one way. Sometimes it's just important for us to listen, listen. That's it. Yeah.
Do you have any other film projects in the pipeline at the moment?
I do. I have Welcome to Marwin will be coming out. That's directed by the great Robert Zemeckis. He did a lot of my favorite films like Castaway, and he worked on Back to the Future, and y'all know his work. But I worked with him in a great ensemble, Steve Carell and Eiza Gonzalez, and it's just some really, really beautiful people. And that should come out in December, and then I have a couple other things that I'm doing. And then I'm going to come back on tour. I think I'll be back here next year. So I'm excited about that.
In one of the interviews that I was reading in preparation for this, speaking of films, I read that during the making of Dirty Computer, that the production of Black Panther was like happening down the road, essentially, and that the actors and the crew would come and hang out at Wondaland. What was that like?
A moment. It was a moment for sure. We had lots of great moments. That's also the cool thing about Atlanta. People are making movies there now. I made Hidden Figures in Atlanta, and Black Panther was made in Atlanta, and you know, it was great to have Chadwick Boseman over, and Lupita, and Michael B, and Daniel as well. All of them are my friends, and when they were just talking to me about the production before, you know, the movie had wrapped, I was working on Dirty Computer, and I was telling them about it, and they came over, and we hosted them, and they were like the first people to listen to the album. And it just felt good to just get their positive vibes. You know, they were up dancing till 4 a.m. They text me afterwards, and that helped me because I remember having to make some real big decisions around what I wanted to talk about, or, you know, just what songs were going to be on there, and where I wanted to go, and to just hear the words of, to just get affirmation from them, like, you're on the right path, you know, we're really excited about this, was a beautiful thing. And to also hear what Ryan Coogler was going to be doing and what they were going to be doing with Black Panther was inspiring. And it just felt like an amazing time for Afrofuturism. Do y'all know about Afrofuturism? Yeah. Well, for me, Afrofuturism is extremely important because we get to, as Black folks in this world, we get to speak through science fiction and magical surrealism. We get to speak about our stories told from our own mouths in the future and what happens to us. So in Black Panther, you see us as kings and queens and amazing STEM heads with Shuri, you know, running the whole, right? An amazing character. You get to see us in those worlds, and sometimes we're depicted in very stereotypical, not that they're not important roles, but you know, we're not monolithic. There's so many things that we can do, and I think it's through that storytelling and through Afrofuturism that you get to see us, all of us, and you get to hear it from our mouths.
Yeah, I think it was especially incredible to read about this kind of crossover between your project and Ryan Coogler's project, Black Panther, because I think once both of these projects hit the media sphere, this narrative came up about it being the era of Afrofuturism or the year of Afrofuturism, but I think it gives a different perspective to learn that you are all actually kind of hanging out together and working on these projects. So, I mean, do you have a sense that this Afrofuturism perspective or imagined future is something that's kind of like permeating in lots of different areas of perhaps African American society or even like globally, the global African diaspora? Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think Afrofuturism is a big global idea, you know. I think that people have already opened up the doors for Afrofuturism decades ago, from Sun Ra to so many, you know, Space is the Place. That film is one to check out. You have so many artists who Betty Davis, George Clinton, you know, Parliament Funkadelic. You can go on and on and on, but they were doing it. I just don't think that there was like a term that sounded as cool as Afrofuturism. But now, you know, it's all about marketing these days, I'm told. But I think it's a great thing. I think it's so great, again, that we get to learn about each other. And, you know, I know that I speak a lot about, you know, what it means to be Black and what it means to be woman. I think that we all gain when we learn, when people are able to walk in their truth. And, you know, I just think that it's always great when we can just celebrate our differences and also understand our interconnectedness.
Absolutely. I guess continuing on a little bit further with Afrofuturism, it's a term that's been applied to your work from the very beginning, because when the Metropolis EP was released, there was the music, but there was also this fully formed world that existed around it with Cindy Mayweather, this rebel android who falls in love with a man, and the whole narrative that existed around it. Where did that come from?
Cindy Mayweather, this android. Well, one, I have a great creative, you know, I have lots of great creative conversations in Wondaland. And one of my, I call him my birthday twin. He's December 2nd, I'm December 1st. And he and I, you know, would sit and watch so many science fiction films. Because when I left New York, I knew I wanted to become an independent artist. I knew that I wanted to contribute something unique to the music industry. I knew that I didn't want to come and just like create music that was just based off being famous. I had some shit I wanted to say. I was, you know, listening to Stevie Wonder, listening to David Bowie, listening to Lauryn Hill, listening to Erykah Badu, listening to Pink Floyd, listening to just a lot of different stuff when I got to Atlanta and I started to hang out and meet folks in Wondaland. And I watched this film, Metropolis, Fritz Lang's 1927 German expressionist film, or not German, yeah, silent film. And I watched that, and I usually fall asleep in silent movies, but for some reason I stayed up this day. And although, like, you know, there was no talking, obviously, it was so much that I heard and so much that I saw with the character of Maria and the have and the have-nots. And there was this one quote that I think inspired everything. It was like the mediator between, I might not be quoting it exactly, but the mediator between the mind and the hands is the heart. And I said, I want to represent the heart. I want to bring people together with music. I want to create a story, a character, a world where people see that it can be done, you know? And so that's what the Metropolis EP aimed to do. And then ArchAndroid continued the story on with Cindy, who is this android. And, you know, she's from a lower class and wired part of town. And she is the one who bridges this gap through her music and through her heroism. That's a word, right?
It is.
I told you I'm on a different time zone, so I'm kind of like this. But that started it. It was that quote. It was that quote. Yeah.
Where is Cindy now?
She's at the hotel. Relaxing.
Just chilling.
You know, just chilling.
Okay.
Yeah, she was very much so involved in Dirty Computer, and really did help me get out these ideas. Like if I didn't do although I had the concept for Dirty Computer around ArchAndroid, I needed to do ArchAndroid. I needed to do Electric Lady to get to Dirty Computer. Like there were just layers that needed to be peeled back, and there was just, you know, I had to do some more living. I had to do some more living, and it was important that it was done in this order, because I don't think I probably would have been ready, like in 2007, to take on a project like this. Yeah, I didn't know enough. I hadn't gone through enough. I had not felt convicted enough. I had not cried enough. I had not loved enough. I had not laughed enough. I had not been hurt enough. I had not been scared enough, fearful enough. I needed to go through all that shit to get here.
Another question about the characters who inhabit your music world. Who is Mary?
Blueberry Mary.
And also, is it Mary Apple as well?
To be continued.
Okay.
Blueberry Mary. I have a song called Mushrooms and Roses. It was on the ArchAndroid, which came out in the future 2010. And it highlights the story around Blueberry Mary, who's in this club called Mushrooms and Roses. And I'm infatuated with her. Cindy's infatuated with her. And this is like her first. Mushrooms and Roses is the place where people go and they can be all the androids. They're not working. They like get to like be crazy and free and, you know, all those things. And so she goes to Mushrooms and Roses and she sees Blueberry Mary's there. And this is like the first time she's really been attracted to her spirit. I mean, Cindy's an android in this song. So it's kind of like everybody's pansexual, you know, in Metropolis. It's just all about a vibe. It's not about like how you identify, because everybody identifies as so many different things, you know, it's a spectrum. And she sees Blueberry Mary, and for the first time, she's having feelings that she just has never felt before. And so that song is an exploration of that, and Blueberry Mary is the person who pulls out what's been inside of Cindy and what was kind of laying dormant, but it needed to be spruced up and watered for it to blossom, you know. And so they have a connection. I think they may have hooked up that night. I think may or may not have. But it was cool, you know. It was really cool. It was a great experience, and she's still a part of the ArchAndroid Electric Lady series, but her DNA is in Mary Apple.
Right.
So
okay.
Dirty Computer's near future, ArchAndroid is 2719.
Okay.
Yeah. So what you see in Dirty Computer hasn't even been born yet, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was reading about Mary, I thought it was really funny that it's like Blueberry Mary and Mary Apple, this like organic, like delicious, edible character.
Yeah.
Was that, I don't know, am I reading too much into it?
I don't know. You know, listen, art is meant to be discussed. Let's discuss it,
right.
You know?
All right, we can take that to the backstage. Where do you think your music projects will be heading to in the future? Do you already have an idea?
Yeah, I have my next 12 albums lined up. Like, I know exactly what I'm going to say. Everything is going to be just fine. No, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm trying to make decisions as I go, just like everybody else. But I know I'm excited about it. I think that I'm in a great space of I know that I want to continue to connect in this way, like going to the shows I mentioned earlier and doing our performances and hearing people sing the songs and the lyrics and owning, you know, this music like it's their music. Like, this is for us. You're actually just here as eye candy Janelle, like you got the costumes on, but this is our music, and I love that. And I do know I want to continue to give people that, and I want to be able to experience it with them. I want us to share in community as much as possible. That's really making me feel good these days and feel like I'm not wasting my time. Just telling universal stories in unforgettable ways. You know, there's some film projects that I definitely want to do. There's some people that I would love to work with as well. Hopefully schedules will align and that can happen. I definitely want to start a family as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's so much in so little time, you know. It's all this stuff actually, I might change my mind when I get to the room. I don't know. You know, it's just, it's so, there's so many great things that we can do, and that's the great thing about life. And I'm just keeping myself very open. I'm open.
Okay. I think we've got a limited amount of time left, but I wanted to ask you two questions as relates specifically to Dirty Computer. What's your favorite moment from it? And that can be a song or a visual still. Yeah, let's start there. What's your favorite moment?
Well, first of all, it almost didn't happen. So everything is just amazing at this point because, you know, we pulled it off. It happened. Exactly. It almost didn't happen. We almost did not have everything shot. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody who worked on the emotion picture. Tessa Thompson, an incredible actress, a dear friend to me. Jason Aaron, who played Che, just an incredible, like, young, up-and-coming talent. Look out for him. All the directors, Andrew and Chuck Lightning and Lacey Duke and Emma and, you know, the producers, the Wondaland management, all these people. Alan Ferguson, who has been with me since Many Moons. I know we were talking about Many Moons backstage, but he shot the first emotion picture, and it was just such a labor of love, you know. Everybody was up long hours, reshooting. I shot Django Jane. Let me tell you, we had a whole video for Django Jane. Couldn't get some things turned in on time, like the special effects would not be done by the time it was going to be released, because it was going to be one of the first of two that came out in February. Do you know I had to shoot that video again 2 days before we released it?
Yeah,
it was crazy. So stuff like that makes me just appreciate the whole project. I think that the scene where Mary and Jane 57821 are walking down the hall before Jane goes to get her last Nevermind treatment. Nevermind is the fog that's in there that really just zaps, helps prep the deletion of memories in Jane. Before she goes to her final treatment to like be erased, they go down a hall together, and you just see them both trying to hold on to love and to hold on to like what her identity is. And that was a moment, like, it was real, just very emotional. I had to fix my makeup so much, so many tears. It was a lot. It was heavy. And then I love the musical scoring of Dirty Computer a lot. I love it so much. Shout out to Nate, Rocket Wonder, and Wynn, who's a part of this amazing group called Twin Shadows. Check them out. She is an incredible producer, and Nate and her got together and they created string arrangements of the songs. And then there's a beach scene. I love the beach scene. Yeah, the music in particular on the beach scene, how it complements, these three people who just love each other and want to create a place that's rooted in love. When you hear the strings juxtaposed to like them out by the water, that moment is so epic. I think that's one of my favorite moments, actually, in Dirty Computer. Yeah, it's those strings on the beach scene.
It's taking you back.
I already want to go on a vacation.
And I guess as a final question, what do you hope that people will take away from Dirty Computer as... I mean, I understand that when you release projects like this, you have to it's like pushing a baby bird out of the nest. It's kind of got to survive on its own. But if there's kind of one message that you would hope is transmitted to people through this project, what would it be?
That we all owe love a responsibility. A responsibility, we have to fight for it. We have to protect it. It's the glue that will keep us together as humanity. And I don't think we can win without it. I think that we lose everything without it. Yeah, I think we win with it, excuse me. And I think we lose everything without it. And it's important that we just know that, and maybe we can stay rooted in that and let that be our guide. And those of us who have felt marginalized or ostracized because of where you come from, who you love, what class you're from, I pray that when they watch Dirty Computer and they listen to Dirty Computer, that they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel accepted, they feel valued, and they feel celebrated to be their free-ass motherfucking selves. Yeah.
Actually, this is a question that I wanted to ask you earlier. Actually, two questions. I'll start with dance and movement and how integral that is to your performance and to your aesthetic. Like, I think for a lot of people, tightrope would have been the first introduction to Janelle Monáe and to her talents. Can you talk a little bit about how dance interacts and interlocks with what you're doing as an artist and how it's a kind of another mode of expression for you?
Well, I started off moonwalking in the kitchen in my socks. I love dancing. I love Michael Jackson. I love Janet Jackson. I love James Brown. I love Prince's dancing. I love David Bowie's dancing. I love Tina on the bass in the Talking Heads. I love how she dances and she moves her legs when she's playing. I love Sister Rosetta Tharpe. I love Little Richard. I love jazz, tap, ballet. I love everything, and I feel like I'm a piece of everything. And I like to create something that's all my own whenever I'm on stage. I do 2 hours of performance every night, and it's nonstop dancing, high energy. And I feel like dancing is very therapeutic. I feel like dancing is a spiritual thing. I feel like dancing can cure a lot of negative thoughts that you might have. I feel like dance is transformative, and I use it as a weapon to fight off patriarchy. and sexism and toxic masculinity. And yeah, I use it for a lot of different things.
Okay. And I think that's a wonderful note to leave this discussion on. Please help me thanking Janelle Monáe for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.